In the dry windswept hills of southeastern Turkey, something impossible waits beneath the soil. Massive T-shaped stone pillars, some weighing over 20 tons, stand arranged in perfect circles. They are carved with detailed images of snarling lions, scorpions with raised tails, leaping foxes, snakes, and haunting human-like figures. These structures were built with remarkable precision more than 11,500 years ago. This should not exist at that time. Hunter-gatherers were not supposed to create monumental architecture like this. Yet here it stands, silent, ancient, and undeniable. This is Göbekli Tepe, and the surrounding network of sites known as Taz Tepeler, the Stone Hills. What archaeologists are uncovering here is quietly forcing a complete rewrite of human history. It suggests that our earliest ancestors were far more complex, far earlier than we ever imagined. For most of the 20th century, the standard explanation of civilization was straightforward. Around 10,000 years ago, humans in the Near East started domesticating wild plants and animals. They learned to farm. With reliable food surpluses came permanent villages. Only after people settled down did they develop the time, labor, and organization needed to build temples, monuments, and cities. Agriculture came first. Everything else followed. It was a logical story. It fit the evidence we had at the time. But then, in the 1990s, a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt stood on a low hill near the city of Şanlıurfa. Locals called it Potbelly Hill, Göbekli Tepe. Schmidt expected perhaps a medieval cemetery or minor ruins. What his team began to reveal changed everything. From the earth emerged circular enclosures, some 30 meters wide, ringed by massive limestone pillars shaped like the letter T. The central pillars in each ring tower more than 5.5 meters high. Many carry high-relief carvings of wild animals that seem almost alive. Geophysical surveys later showed at least 20 such enclosures still mostly buried, potentially holding hundreds of pillars in total. Radiocarbon dating shocked the archaeological world. The earliest layers dated to around 9,600 BCE, possibly earlier. That places these structures more than 6,000 years before the pyramids of Egypt and 7,000 years before Stonehenge. The problem was immediate. There were no signs of domesticated wheat or barley in the earliest phases. No evidence of permanent villages nearby. No herds of domesticated animals. The people who quarried, transported, shaped, and erected these 20-ton stones were still mobile hunter-gatherers, following wild game and gathering plants. Yet they managed feats of engineering and organization that we once believed required settled farming societies. How did they coordinate the labor? What drove them to invest such enormous effort? And why build something so monumental when survival alone should have been their only concern? As excavations expanded under Turkey's Taz Tepeler project, which now covers at least 12 related Neolithic sites across roughly 100 square kilometers, the picture grew richer and more complex. Sites like Karahan Tepe, about 46 kilometers east of Göbekli Tepe, have revealed similar T-pillars, but also clear evidence of year-round domestic structures built right beside the monumental enclosures. Phallic carvings rise from the bedrock. Human-like statues appear in greater numbers. At Sayburk and other locations, researchers have found narrative-style reliefs and signs of sustained human activity. In recent years, the project has announced dozens of new discoveries. These include human statues placed inside walls as possible votive offerings, intricate jewelry and amulets, animal sculptures, and at Karahan Tepe a large circular structure with tiered stone benches carved into the bedrock, resembling an early amphitheater. Human heads emerge from the walls, and seated human statues stand on the floor. This appears to be one of the earliest known purpose-built communal gathering spaces in human history. The scale suggests thousands of people from a wide region came together here, perhaps seasonally at first, then for longer periods. They feasted on wild game. Tens of thousands of animal bones have been recovered. They shared stories, performed rituals, and created something that transcended daily survival. The old textbook explanation no longer held. These monuments were not the luxurious result of farming societies with extra time on their hands. They seemed to predate the very agriculture they were once thought to require. So what was really happening on these stone hills more than 11,000 years ago? Genetic and isotopic studies from nearby pre-pottery Neolithic sites paint an intriguing picture. Evidence from the broader Anatolian region shows that the people involved carried lineages that would later spread into Europe and the Near East. What stands out is the relative suddenness of social and symbolic complexity. There are fewer signs of centuries of slow, gradual experimentation with wild cereals. Instead, it feels like a leap driven perhaps by shared beliefs, rituals, or the need to come together in large numbers. Three main theories have emerged to explain what these sites represent. Each is serious and grounded in evidence, yet each leaves important questions unanswered. The first theory views the sites as seasonal gathering places. Dispersed bands of hunter-gatherers would converge here for rituals, feasting, trade, and social bonding. The predator imagery, lions, scorpions, snakes, and vultures, may have symbolized the wild forces of nature that people needed to honor or control. Massive feasts would have strengthened alliances and created a shared identity across a wide landscape. In this view, the monuments served as neutral sacred ground that helped hold larger social networks together without kings or permanent hierarchy. The second theory reverses the traditional sequence entirely. Perhaps the act of building these awe-inspiring places came first. By committing collective effort to permanent stone structures, people created powerful reasons to return year after year. That repeated cooperation built the social skills, trust, and organizational knowledge that later made large-scale cultivation practical. The need to feed recurring gatherings of hundreds or even thousands could have encouraged more intensive management of wild grasses nearby. In this reading, the temples helped give birth to agriculture, rather than agriculture giving birth to the temples. The third theory connects the sites to one of the most dramatic climate events in recent geological history, the Younger Dryas. Around 12,800 years ago, global temperatures plunged back toward Ice Age conditions for more than 1,000 years. Some researchers interpret certain carvings, especially on Pillar 43 at Göbekli Tepe, the so-called vulture stone, as encoding astronomical observations. A vulture-like figure carrying a severed head, surrounded by animals that may represent constellations, has been read by some as a memorial to a catastrophic swarm of comet fragments that struck Earth, triggering fires, climate disruption, and the extinction of many large animals. The enclosures, built as the climate began to warm again around 9,600 BCE, may have served as places of remembrance, renewal, and communal healing after collective trauma. Each theory captures part of the truth. The sites clearly had ritual importance. They also supported growing social complexity. And they appeared right as the world emerged from the Younger Dryas cold snap. But none fully explains everything. Why were many enclosures deliberately backfilled with thousands of tons of soil and debris around 8000 BC not simply abandoned, but carefully sealed? Why the sophisticated geometry and artistic confidence in the carvings? And why does the evidence show a gradual blending of ritual spaces with emerging domestic life at related sites? Recent seasons have uncovered clear signs of grain processing, water cisterns, and domestic structures integrated with the monumental areas. What was once seen as purely ritual centers now appear to have hosted sustained human presence over generations. The old idea that you needed full agriculture before you could build monuments has been turned upside down. The monuments and the gatherings they enabled may have created the social pressure and cooperation that pushed people toward domesticating plants. These were not crude, primitive experiments. The enclosures show careful planning and precise geometry. Pillars were quarried from nearby limestone, shaped on site, and erected with impressive skill. Some pillars still show traces of paint. New finds include more human-centered art at sites like Karahan Tepe, where the focus seems to shift toward representations of people rather than just animals. The amphitheater-like structure with tiered benches suggests early forms of communal performance or shared storytelling. The deliberate burial of the enclosures feels almost reverent, as if the builders understood these places as belonging to a specific era and chose to preserve them by returning them to the earth. Imagine what life felt like on these hills 11,000 years ago. The wind moves through wild grasses. In the distance, groups of people arrive from different directions, carrying offerings, tools, and stories. For days or weeks, The hill comes alive with the sounds of feasting, chanting, and shared rituals under the open sky. Young hunters learn the meanings behind the carved animals from elders. Alliances form through shared labor and awe. The great T-pillars stand as silent witnesses, perhaps representing ancestors, spirits, or the collective memory of the group. Then the gathering ends. People disperse back into the landscape. The stones remain, waiting quietly for the next cycle. No written records. No kings issuing commands. Just a living tradition sustained by memory, belief, and the extraordinary willingness to move mountains of stone together. We almost lost this chapter of our story. For centuries the hill was overlooked or dismissed as something much later. What the excavators have revealed is not just older history. It is a different kind of history, one that places symbolic thought, ritual, wonder, and the human need to create meaning at the very foundation of who we are. This discovery matters because it challenges a long-held assumption about human progress. We used to think that practical needs, food, shelter, survival, came first, and culture, art, and spirituality developed later as luxuries. The stone hills suggest the opposite may be closer to the truth. The drive to gather, to ritualize, to reach for something greater than daily survival may have been the spark that eventually led to farming, settled life, and everything that followed. Our ancestors did not build these places because they had extra time after inventing agriculture. They may have invented more intensive ways of managing food because they needed to support the gatherings and the shared vision that these monuments represented. The lost city was never truly lost. It was patiently waiting under the soil until our tools and our curiosity caught up with it. Now that we have found it, the origin story of humanity no longer begins with quiet farmers in their fields. It begins on these windswept hills, where our ancestors looked up at the same stars we see tonight, felt the same wind on their skin, and decided that some truths deserved to be carved in stone and remembered for thousands of years. They built not only for themselves, but for memory. They created spaces where the boundary between the everyday and the sacred could dissolve. In doing so, they planted seeds that would grow into the complex societies we inhabit today. As new excavations continue uncovering more pillars, more statues, more traces of daily and ritual life, we come closer to understanding not just where we came from, but the deeper currents that still move through us, the need to gather, to wonder, to create something enduring, and to reach beyond ourselves. The stones of Göbekli Tepe and the Taz Tepler do more than rewrite the past. They invite us to reflect on what we choose to build in our own time and why.